Good morning, everyone. This is the Board of Trustees regular meeting, 2020-16. It's September 22nd, 2020 at 9:01 a.m. We're in the Village Auditorium. Jane, please take the roll.
President Barry?
Here.
Trustee Phelan? Trustee Border?
Here.
Trustee Mello? Here. Trustee Stalker? Trustee Oliniechek would like to participate by phone, and Trustee Desmond.
Here.
Thank
We
you.
do have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please, to allow Trustee Oliniechek to participate by phone? Thank you, Trustee Mallow, seconded by Trustee Desmond. Any discussion? Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Border?
Yes.
Trustee Mello?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Would you rise for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic.
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I'm informed we have no public comments on today's agenda. We're going to move on to conflict of interest disclosure. Item 4, does anyone have a conflict to disclose with any item on today's agenda? Okay, hearing none. Item 5, Plough's proclamation in honor of their 45th anniversary, requested by myself. And, Plough's has been started in Oaklawn. And for those of you who don't know what Plough's is, it's a organization for senior advocacy and support. And it was started right here in Oaklawn, and it represents the township of Palos, Lamont, Orland, and Worth. And, we are just very honored to help them celebrate 45 years. I've signed this proclamation, we'll enter it into the record, and congratulate them on the good work they do. If you are a senior or a caregiver for a senior and you don't know where to go for resources for your unique situation, Plough's has been there, Plough's has done it. Reach out to them, plows.org. Item 6, presentation of the 2019 audited financial statements by RSM. Morning.
Morning, Mayor. Morning, trustees. Thank you for having us. My name is John George. I'm an audit partner with RSM. With me today is Jeff Slade and Katie Berry. Jeff is a manager on the engagement, and Katie Berry is a senior manager. We're going to recap the highlights of the 2019 financial statements and audit process. As we're going through it, feel free to hop in with any questions as we're going along.
I'm not sure we can hear your mic. Tom, can you check?
Can you hear me? Is that okay? Yes.
Talk,
okay, great.
Please.
I'll talk closer, sure.
Thank you.
In addition to Jeff, myself, and Katie, we had Paige Morgano and Beatrice Rios that rounded out the team. Paige is a supervisor with the firm, and Beatrice is an associate. So, with COVID, a different timeline, a different approach this year, obviously. A lot of communication, a lot of work with management. We had a process with our SharePoint site. We're working remote throughout the entire process. Information was shared with us through that secure site. Status calls frequently throughout the process with management and your finance team, and we were able to complete the audit timely and a smooth process. So overall, the timing overview, I'll cover that quick and then turn it over to Jeff to do a little recap of some of the deliverables, and Katie will cover the financial report. As far as timing, we did start our preliminary and single audit work the week of April 20th. So obviously after COVID, we did communicate and coordinate as needed for information. As needed, we did come out if it was necessary to cite supporting documentation that transferred electronically, and we coordinated that with management. Our final field work was started the week of April 27th and progressed through June, and that's where we did all our substantive tested details around the account balances and the financial statements, our compliance tests, and all of the rest of our supporting tests and procedures. We did have weekly status calls with your finance team and management, and again. the audit overall progressed smoothly, given the scenario that we're in. We did have a presentation with the Finance Committee on August 6th to review the drafts of the financial statements and deliverables, and exit meetings with management, recapping again the financial statements and our all of which we'll touch on today. And that brings us to today's board meeting. So again, I'll turn it over to Jeff as we're going through. Please feel free with any questions.
To provide a recap of the audit from a compliance standpoint, in 2019, we performed compliance testing over the various tax incremental financing districts within the village, in which we did not identify any instances of non-compliance for the expenditures reported within those funds. For the compliance testing, we perform a test of substantive details in which we examine the various invoices, purchase orders, and payments made out of those individual TIF districts. When it comes to federal grant programs in 2019, we performed a federal single audit in which we performed testing over the village's single major program, which is the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency Loan Program. In 2019, we issued an unmodified opinion over compliance and an unmodified opinion when it pertains to internal controls over financial reporting. And finally, we also did not identify any instances of non-compliance as when it comes to the federal grant program as well.
All right, so I am going to run through the comprehensive annual financial report. So it's the thicker bound book that you have in front of you. So what makes this a comprehensive annual financial report is the Governmental Finance Officers Association Certificate of Excellence prescribes a lot of the information that's reflected in this financial report. So we have the introductory schedule, which includes a transmittal letter, which is a nice narrative of the background of the Village of Oaklawn. And then in the back of the financial report, we have the statistical schedules, which include 10 years worth of information of financial information, revenue capacity, debt capacity, demographic information of the village. So the opinion we issued on the financial report is an unmodified opinion. It's a good, clean opinion. It's the opinion that you want. If you remember from prior years, there's really two sets of financial statements in the comprehensive annual financial statement. We have your government-wide financial statements and your fund financial statements. Your fund financial statements is really what the finance department tracks in its general ledger, budgets for, and monitors reports on a monthly basis. The government-wide financial statements, it includes all of your non-current assets, your capital assets. It includes all of your long-term liabilities, like your pension liabilities, your other post-employment benefit liabilities, your debt liabilities, all of those non-current obligations. So let's get into the numbers. For December 31, 2019, on your government-wide financial statements, the net position decreased by $5.8 million. And to round it out at a deficit of $133 million. So to get to those numbers, there's reconciliations in the financial statement that go between fund financial statements and the government wides. Those are on report pages 22 and 24, and really you can see all the components that make up those numbers. And the overwhelming majority is really those pension liabilities and the other post-employment benefit liability. Those are considered significant estimates in your financial liability or in your financial report, and there's a lot of disclosure associated around those liabilities. Disclosures over those liabilities start on report pages 56 and extend through report page 79. And those liabilities are, they are derived from an actuarial valuation. So there's a lot of underlying assumptions. We audit that information. We engage our internal actuaries. They review those evaluations for reasonableness and accuracy. So just to put things in context, as of December 31, 2019, the police pension liability was $88 million. The fire pension liability was $76 million. IMRF was $2.9 million. And the OPEB liability was $31.3 million. What I think is a really helpful thing in the financial report are some of the required disclosures that are required by GASB. And one of those is considered the sensitivity analysis. So with all of these assumptions that go into the valuation, one of the things that's kind of useful to point out is what happens if that discount rate changes by 1% higher or 1% lower. So for an example, if you were to look at the police pension for an example, on page 67, it shows that sensitivity analysis. So with the current discount rate of 7%, the liability, as I mentioned, was 88 million. But you can see that if it goes up to 8%, the liability actually would decrease to $67 million. If that discount rate went down to a 6%, the pension liability would increase to 112 million. So you can see that there's a lot of variability just basically inherent with the valuation. So there's a lot of effort that goes into those assumptions, both on the village's end, working with the actuary, and on our end as well as auditing. The other things that I think with just the dollar amount and the size of those other useful schedules to look at are the required supplementary information. Eventually, that will be 10 years worth of information, but the standard hasn't been around for that long. So we're reporting on or reflecting everything that's in there at this point in time. So that will go through and provide all of the components of each one of those pensions in the overall components with the fiduciary net position as well as the liability. One last schedule to point out in that required supplementary information is actually the contributions associated with the pensions and the IMRF. So there's nothing but positive associated with the village's formal funding policy that was established years ago. And it's really because of that policy where the liabilities have decreased from where they were when the standard was originally there. So the village is chipping in additional contributions to fund these pensions. The last schedule, there's the schedule of contribution shows the actual contributions the village is making this is on report page 96. It shows the actual contributions the village is making compared to what's actuarially determined to get these pensions funded. And you can see that there's still a contribution deficit that's happening every year. But with that formal funding policy that's in place, eventually the village will get to hopefully funding that actuarially determined contribution. Outside the pensions and the OPEB, there's a lot of information I provided out there. One last thing. So the Cook County Treasurer's Office actually publishes a report of all governments within Cook County and what their funded ratio is. The last report published was as of January of 2020, so that's likely based on your 2018 financial information. At that point in time, the village was at 67% funded. To point out some of the other governments that are in the area, Tinley Park was at 74%, Chicago Ridge 46%, Matson 41%. You can see a lot of the other, any other government that's in the Cook County, including school districts, the fire protection services. So it's information that's available that's out there that kind of puts other things in perspective as well. Outside those government-wide financial statements, again, those pension and OPEB liabilities are really big drivers of the statement of net position. If we go back to the fund financial statements, the numbers that we want to point out here are really the general fund. So that's on page 23. That's essentially the income statement of the fund financial statements. You can see that the overall decrease in fund balance was 2.3 million deficit. So the general fund is ending at a $4.1 million fund balance. And of that 4.1 million, 1.3 million is really unassigned or available for any purpose of the village. Any questions on any of it? Yes.
If I'm understanding you correctly, so that, I mean, even though we have increased our contributions by millions, we're not really paying a whole lot down. I mean, our pension liability has only decreased by, what, 2 million since 2018?
Yeah, so of the additional contributions that are being made, it is ultimately getting that liability lower than what it would be had you not be adding those additional contributions. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of fluctuation every year. So if you go back to those RSI schedules, let's look at the police pension, for example, that's on report page 94. When you look at kind of the middle table, that's kind of the fund itself, and you can see just the fluctuation of what investment income does to the pension liability every year. So
But is it the investments that are not keeping up? I mean,
so
we have contributed, maybe 6-7 million in the 2 years, and yet the
yep.
balance has only been reduced by 2 million. So where's the money going, I guess I'm asking?
Yeah, so the contributions are definitely keeping that liability, I would say, down in terms of the projection of where the liability is going to be. So when you think about just how the market performed with the investment at a point in time, right? So in 2018, the investment income was really a loss of about 4. And then when you look at 2019, it was actually investment income of 13 million. So just by the investments alone, there was a shift of about 18 million in the overall, the fiduciary net position. So when it gets to the.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Oh,
Some
I'm sorry.
people who are communicating. Yeah,
sorry.
it's just hard for everyone to hear. Thank you.
So when you get to the actual liability that the actuary is calculating, he's taking into consideration those additional contributions that the village is chipping in now. And that makes a difference in how that total liability is getting projected.
But I mean, if the stock market is making such great gains over these number of years, why, again, how is it not reflected?
But Tim, if you look at page 66, the police pension, one of the problems is that what we're putting in, and Katie just said, actuarially, we have a funding policy to try to get to the number,
Right.
but we're still below what the actuary would tell you to put in. If you look at the benefit payments, last year in 2019, it was see the benefit payments in the down? 8.3, and we put in 4.4. So
Even if we put in 4.4 million last year and the same year before that, 9 million, and our pension liability for the police has actually increased.
right. Because,
I mean,
Tom, again, I know this is not something that happened overnight, and God knows Tom Phelan has talked about pension obligations in the state of Illinois, and so my discussion with Katie was to explain to the board that we're not the only ones in the boat, but the boat is sinking, and it is because you can only commit so much of your general fund to what I think are old legacy liabilities that really should have been paid for by old property tax owners as opposed to current property tax owners in Oaklawn. So
I understand that, and I mean, and we are paying these extra millions every year at the expense of, maybe something that, the residents need, like, better streets and all that. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of, how are we not digging ourselves out of the hole quicker? I mean,
Isn't a lot of this interest as well, Brian and Katie? I mean, a lot of it is because we're in that deficit mode, but as we pay, we're still paying a larger chunk of interest.
I mean, interest, and is it this guaranteed cost of living increase every year? I mean,
Correct.
It's bound to be eating away at it. Just, again, explain to me, because obviously.
Can you talk into the microphone, trustee, just
All
so,
right. No, it seems that do we have any control over the discount rate?
we do.
That seems to be,
Yeah, so
and that seems to be more beneficial than,
So the discount rate is actually comprised of two items. It's comprised of the long-term rate of return on the investments, and then it's also comprised of the 20-year bond rate. So what the actuary does is he'll go through and he'll calculate the solvency of the plan. So based on that fiduciary net position of the pension plan, they'll go through and they'll apply the typical investment rate of return, 7%, to the investments long-term and see how long that pot of money is going to last to pay out all of the benefit payments of the retiree. And so after that runs out, then they have to kick in and use that 20% bond rate, which as of December of 2019 was like 3%, or it was substantially lower. So what that means is that instead of using a 7% discount rate, you could potentially be using a much lower rate.
Okay.
So I think that's a part of what the actuary does. They do an analysis of the overall solvency. Is this plan going to last 100 years? Is it going to dry up in 20 years?
They get that information, Tim. Morgan Stanley, one that runs our portfolio for both fire and police, and our discount rate for both those was like 7.1. Going, again, this goes back 30 years, and it doesn't mean that's what we're going to, so we can't really support. I know this is a sensitivity analysis just to show the liability, but we can't really support an 8% discount rate, which would take the liability lower. I think the 7% rate's the one that we can support.
Yeah, but I mean, to increase this discount rate, what the village or as a board need to do? I mean,
If I
can
could,
we work,
If
what
I
can we
could-
work towards?
if I could add a comment, thank you, Mayor. When you talk about the discount rate, Tim, and we encountered this when Brian got hired, it'd be argued that that's the way you play with the numbers, right? You artificially change your funding because if you move it one way or the other, your requirement goes up or down, and whether that's a good and legitimate practice. One of the things about pensions, and Brian's right about this, 15 years ago, Jane, I went and found the minutes where I had left a seminar and a presenter said something to the effect of, it's not a matter of if, but when they all go bankrupt. There's no question you could ask that we could answer, anybody could answer that says, oh, this is the answer. There's not enough money to put into these things. People are living longer, retiring earlier, the COLAs are going up. All of these things are like triple pressure down. And the best I heard it explained is a discussion with people who are getting pensions, who rightfully believe that they earn those pensions, and they use a term like, I put in my fair share. I put in my fair share, because what they were told that they were supposed to put in, they put in. The problem is fair share is not an economic term, not a financial term. If you go to a bank or insurance company and say, I want to buy an annuity, they'll say, do you want a fixed or a variable annuity? Fixed is very simple. You have this much money, there's an interest rate, you're going to get a very specific payment over time. Totally easy to understand. Variable annuity is, maybe I want my money in the stock market a little bit. Okay, fine, but you're going to take some risk there, that your annuity might have some payment, but there's going to be something at the end that if the markets don't perform well, you get less than what you put in. Problem with pensions is we have variable annuity activity in the market, but fixed payments, right? The rest of us who have 401ks, 403bs, if the market goes down, we get less. Pensions, doesn't matter what the market does, up or down. And that's the fundamental problem with it. There is no fair share. You can't go into a bank and say, I'm just going to put in what I believe is a fair share. No, this is what you're going to put in if you want this. Guaranteed. If you don't want it guaranteed, fine, you have to take some risk. Our pensioners don't have any risk.
We take, the village takes the market risk, as opposed to, in Tom's example, in a 401K, the individual account holder takes the market risk. But the discount rate, Tim, and again, this goes back 13 to 15 years, we did have an actuary at the time, and Tom knows this, that used a 9% discount rate. The problem is that you have to support that discount rate. That's what the auditors, actuarial assumptions, you can't just, I mean, look, we could make this, Tom knows this, we could pick a 12% rate, and it would look like our pension fund was fully funded. So, but you've got investment, as Tom just said, you have gains and losses within a given year, so we take market risk. So, as Katie said, you had a loss in 2018. A lot of that came back in 2019. Now, the way the actuary does it is they use, it's called smoothing. They do smooth losses and gains over 5 years, Tim. So I think the discount rate that we have is I'll defer to RSM, but I think it's a fairly accurate rate to reflect what really is the status of the pension, or as good as we could have it
And
today.
if I could add one more point about discount rate. With pension funds, if you want to be on the safe side, and because the retirement monies you should be, right? You should have more money in the bond market, safer stuff, and that's the way traditionally they were, 70-30, 60-40. Problem is, bonds aren't paying anything. You can't get any money on bonds. You're losing money on bonds in volatile interest rate environments, and so there's more pressure. I mean,
And to that point, Tom, we actually, in the state of Illinois, we cannot, you have a limitation. We can only, and by the way, Morgan Stanley does a very good job, I believe, and we have quarterly meetings, we've had numerous, in fact, Paul Mallow was at our last board meeting, but we are limited to 35% of our pool of money has to stay in fixed income to that point. So 35% of your money is only earning, I think our earning last year was about 2%. So the other 65 has to work that much harder in a given.
Yeah, I mean, I know, and just from briefly going through this and my limited understanding of it, there's a lot of figures and graphs that are jumping out that I don't fully understand. That it seems that the village is actually doing okay, except, which I'm sure is the same with every other municipality, the pension issue. I mean, we have been able to keep the tax levy either down or consistent. The obvious solution is, like a lot of other places do and we don't want to do, is raise taxes. But I think we have been pretty consistent over the number of years that we don't want to put the burden on the homeowner every time we need extra money. I mean, so I don't know. I mean,
Can I just, the one hope, if you look at page 55, when the board approved the pension funding policy, which really about the start of when Mayor Barry was elected, okay, in 2012, 2013, our debt level was around $95 million. When I mean our debt level, I'm talking about our general obligation debt. So if you look at page 55, that number has dropped rather substantially to about 65 million. The two numbers to look at on that page, Tim, are see where it says principal under general obligation and then notes payable?
All right.
So there's $60 million, and then you have to add about 5 million to the third column. So that is how we've replaced those debt payments with pension funding. The problem is, how much lower can our debt really go? Because most of what's left is the debt that was used to fund some of the street program, for lack of a better way to put it, catch-up back in 2011.
Right, and again, I'm just trying to get a layman's understanding of this. We seem to be doing everything right. You said we have dropped the debt from 98 million to 65 million. We've increased our pension payments, and we are still digging ourselves out of a hole.
Well, again, all I can tell you in terms of...
Without raising tax.
Well, I know, and if you look at it's a very tough catch. You get those that have received a pension from the Village of Oaklawn get a 3% raise every year. In addition to that, we already talked about the discount rate, so you have to earn not just the 7, but again, these are all in the actuarial assumptions. You have to earn virtually 10%, and as we just said, Tim, the problem is your 65% has to work harder to get there.
Of course.
There's another point to be made here, and it's interesting, we're talking about paying down that debt. I remember when, I wasn't on the board at the time, but when the discussion was being had and you guys talked about it, there's the term judicious use of debt, right? It's not a terrible thing to have debt. The saddest part about all of that, what was that total pay down, Brian, just roughly you said, 50, 60 million?
You mean our general obligation debt, it was about 30 to 35.
And what did we get from it from a benefit standpoint? My point being, our rating went down. We didn't get any benefit for doing what's right, so to speak. But I would also say that in an interest rate environment we're in, we have to look hard at maybe not doing that. I mean, Brian and I were looking at these pension bonds, and the inclination is they're not good ideas, and they're not. But when interest rates are 2%, and likely to stay to, aggressively paying back debt can be argued as not the smartest thing in the world, especially when you don't get any benefit for it. We got a minor downgrade after all that effort. Brian was on the phone with the rating agencies, and how about it, Brian? They don't care. You said, what about this? Look at the pensions. Look at the pensions. Look at the pensions. Look at everybody's pensions. And so that's the frustrating thing about this. You can do a great job of paying down debt, making the village healthier, and then, it's the old adage, we're going to be like the smartest person in the dumb room, right? When it all goes to hell in a handbasket and every pension fund goes bankrupt, we'll be the best of the worst. And it's a frustrating thing, to be honest with you, because I think we really have to look at, allocating the monies we have to do what Tim says, is to take care of the constituents who are living today. We've talked for many years about legacy, down the road, our children, all very important. But at some point we said, hey, what about the people that are struggling today, that need their streets and their sewers and their houses are backing up because they don't have proper, abatement. So I think that's a discussion we have to have during our budget here.
Tom, you're touching on it. What we have is a situation legislated by Springfield, frankly, that we have no control over, and yet we have to find ways to do it. What we're doing is basically devitalizing our community, not just for this generation, but next generation, possibly even generations after that, for the benefit of a few hundred people. And I really struggle with how to reconcile that. When you look at the great gift we have in collecting taxes, each one of those is someone's blood and sweat and tears and hard work. And you can't put that money to work to benefit the person who's producing that tax revenue. It's really, really hard. Now, do our public pensioners deserve a secure retirement? Yes. But I really question what we have are two systems, the government-funded system and then the private sector, which has none of these benefits. And these people are feeding this higher echelon of benefit. It's very hard to justify. And, I don't know what the answer is, but it needs to come from Springfield. It needs to come now, not later. If we just fix it moving forward, there is hope, but there's very little intestinal fortitude for anyone to say, oh, no, we're going to change the system. We need to change the system. It is, when I think of what this community could do with an extra $4 or $5 million a year that we're forking over for this pension debt, and again, I don't want to deprive anyone of what they were promised, but if we cannot fix it moving forward, Tom, you're absolutely right. It's a sinking ship, and, I don't know the answer. And people can move. People don't need to take it, and
They are, Mayor, they are moving.
I know. So, anyway, the story of Oaklawn is a good story, and thank you for, your comments. It's been, a source of pride, I think, and I want to compliment our finance team, Brian and Adam and our whole department heads for helping keep us.
And if I could, to that end, RSM was delayed because of COVID-19 by about 60 days, and it is Adam Metz, Deb Nabrizia, and Darlene Popovich. So those were Susie Kelly. There was a number of others.
Brian,
But anyway, I just like to mention those people.
thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I guess just to close it out, great discussion. I think the village is from our perspective, from the auditor's perspective, looking at all the key components, right? You're trying to do the best you can in the situation that you have. From a budgetary perspective, balancing out what the services you can continue to offer, managing out the contributions that you've put forth in your formal funding policy to maximize what you could do for your pensions. So from an auditor's perspective, you're doing the right things. You're having those good discussions, and you've got a great team between the boards. The board and management. You're hitting those right points, and you're asking the right questions, and you're doing the best you can in a difficult. On a positive note, with the financial statements, like Katie and Jeff mentioned, unmodified, clean opinions, no compliance findings. So I just wanted to round that off. That your team is you guys have done a great job from managing what you have. We did have a difficult, it's a difficult circumstance, obviously. We worked through it, and we got to this point today. So we appreciate all the efforts of management and all the work that was put in to help get to this point.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments before we move on? Always a pleasure. Thank you, and thank you for making that so concise. It's a lot of data and a lot of critical information for the board, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7, approval of the meeting minutes for the regular meeting minutes 2020-15 dated September 8th, 2020. May I have a motion on item 7?
Motion approved.
Thank you. Trustee Mallow made that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Trustee Phelan, thank you. Any discussion? Let's call the vote, please.
Trustee Phelan?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Mello?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, new business by village trustees. Let's start in District 1.
I have no new business, thank you.
District 2, Trustee Oliniechek.
I just have a couple of things. Number one, we met last week with ComEd, and they are committed to providing us with the detailed information that we requested. We still have a walkthrough and some other meeting with them to get to the root cause of what happened, and more importantly, what we can do to avoid, or what ComEd can do to avoid the next major storm that comes through. So I'm looking forward to hearing from them on that information and looking at our annual report, which they were supposed to get to us in August. And then secondly, from a Halloween side, I know that it's coming up. Halloween, I believe this year is on a Saturday.
Yes.
And I will tell you that I think from a village side, we owe it to the kids to try to put something together on a limited hour basis with social distancing and with having masks, but at least have some type of Halloween for our kids of the neighborhood. So I would hope that the board would work to at least consider that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. District 3.
No new business.
Thank you. District 4.
No new business.
District 6.
Nothing this morning.
Thank you very much. Village managers report.
Nothing, board and mayor.
Okay, item 10 is the consent agenda. Excuse me. All items on the consent agenda are routine and have been brought forward at the direction of the Board of Trustees and will be enacted with one motion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. 10A is approval of a temporary parking lot tent to sell mums and pumpkins. This is Lertsima Sales at Jewel at 95th and Pulaski from September 23rd, 2020 through November 6th, 2020. B like boy is ordinance 2016-45, an ordinance granting that request. An ordinance amending section 5, meetings of the appeal and review ordinance. C is a request to approve the Appeals and Review Board referral for a billboard sign variation and an animated sign size variation at 9502 West Shore Drive. This was a 7-0 vote to approve. Item D is ordinance 2016-46, an ordinance approving a billboard sign variation and an animated sign variation for a sign at 9502 West Shore Drive. E is ordinance 2016-47, an ordinance authorizing the sale of village vehicles and property that have reached a useful lifespan. F is ordinance 2016-48, an ordinance of the Village of Oaklawn, Cook County, Illinois, continuing the regional water system and providing for improvements and extensions thereto and borrowings to pay the costs thereof. Amending ordinance number 132271 and ordinance number 141937 and certain provisions of the long-term water sale, purchase, and service agreements by and among number 1, the Village of Oaklawn, Cook County, Illinois, and the villages of Mokina, New Lenox, Orland Park, Tinley Park, Illinois, and the City of Oak Forest, Illinois, and 2, the Village of Oaklawn, Cook County, Illinois, and the villages of Chicago Ridge and Palos Park, Illinois, and the City of Palos Hills, Illinois, and authorizing the execution and delivery of said amendments. G is ordinance 2016-49, ordinance setting the time and date for a public hearing to consider the amended redevelopment plan and project for the Patriot Station TIF redevelopment project area, and convening a joint review board in connection therewith. H is Resolution 2016-58, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Oaklawn and the Illinois Department of Health, Care and Family Services. May I have a motion on 10, please?
Motion approved.
Thank you. Trustee Mallow made that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'm going to give that to Trustee Phelan. Any discussion, gentlemen?
Remove C and D, Mayor.
C like cat, D like David. Thank you. Any other?
F, please.
And F. Okay, any other discussion? So we are voting on item 10 with the exception of C, D, and F. Let's call the vote, please.
Trustee Phelan?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Mallow?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 10C is a request to approve the Appeals and Review Board referral for a billboard sign variation and animated sign size variation at 9502 West Shore Drive. This was a 7-0 vote to approve. BRT Outdoors, the petitioner in District 3. May I have a motion on 10C, please?
Motion to deny.
We have a motion to deny by Trustee Mallow. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I'm going to give that to Trustee Vorderer. Any discussion?
Yes, Mayor. Just regarding the sign, the 95th Street corridor plan does not recommend any billboards to be installed along 95th Street. That is the reason for this denial.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion? So we are voting on a motion to deny on item 10C. Let's call that vote, please.
Trustee Phelan?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Mallow?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 to deny.
Thank you. We have item 10D like David, ordinance 2016-46, an ordinance approving a billboard sign variation and an animated sign variation for a sign at 9502 West Shore Drive, BRT Outdoors, the petitioner. May I have a motion on 10D, please?
Motion to deny.
Thank you. Trustee Mallow made a motion to deny. Do I have a second? Trustee Oliniechek is our second. Any discussion here? Hearing none, let's call the vote on the motion to deny.
Trustee Phelan?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Mallow?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 to deny.
Thank you. Ordinance 10F, item 10F is ordinance 2016-48, an ordinance of the Village of Oaklawn, Cook County, Illinois, continuing the regional water system and providing for improvements and extensions thereto and borrowings to pay the cost thereof, amending ordinance number 132271 and ordinance number 141937, and certain provisions of the water sale, purchase, and service agreements by and among, number 1, the Village of Oaklawn, Cook County, Illinois, and the villages of Mokina, New Lenox, Orland Park, Tinley Park, Illinois, and the city of Oak Forest, Illinois, and 2, the village of Oaklawn, Cook County, Illinois, and the villages of Chicago Ridge, Palos Park, Illinois, and the city of Palos Hills, Illinois, and authorizing the execution and delivery of said amendments. May I have a motion on 10F, please?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Trustee Phelan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Trustee Oliniechek is our second. Any discussion?
Yes,
Trustee
thank
Phelan.
you, Mayor. The reason I'd ask for this to be pulled is, as everybody here knows, this is the largest project the village has, I believe, ever undertaken, certainly from a size, scope, dollar amount. It's our largest expenditure, probably for the last several years, Bri. Single expenditure, if you want to call it a single. And it's an excellent project, and I don't want it to sound like I think it isn't. I mean, I was there in Springfield, and Larry Deachin pitched the idea, and if everybody understands, this is where we're expanding our water distribution system, making sure there's redundancy, serving 300,000 people, and all those things. My concern is the amount of money that we're spending and whether or not we're doing a good job from a fiduciary standpoint to ensure that we're getting the best deal, if you will, for not only our residents, for the downstream communities. And by that I mean these legs of construction. I think they're referred to, right? They're sections, Brian?
Bid packages.
Yes, bid packages. I just asked our village attorney, who's familiar with some of these other towns and lives out in Orland, what level of involvement they have down there. You know, is there any concerns, rumblings, if you will, that we're doing a good enough job? When I say we, you know, I didn't know who it is that's our current engineering firm. You know, are they going out and getting aggressive bids? We had a situation on our last agenda. We didn't drill down on it, but we had a project in Oaklawn that they bid out, and we had one bidder. I was told there were 4 or 5 interested parties and only one bidder. It still doesn't really make a lot of sense to me in a COVID environment where 4 or 5 companies would walk away from a $250,000 job. So I had asked our attorneys at that time, just if he could make an informal inquiry of these various towns. And I don't want to speak for him, he maybe can speak to it a little bit, but there is a little bit of concern from them about involvement. You know, are we out there getting aggressive proposals? Is there an inclination to work with the same companies? And again, I don't know that this to be true at all. I floated the idea out there because the last thing I want to have as the Oaklawn Regional Water Center is feelings, thoughts, allegations that we're not doing the due diligence that maybe we could to ensure that we're getting the best possible bang for our buck with clearly competent companies. We don't want to, rebid it out and have a company who's not able to do the work. So I asked the village attorney if he would mind commenting this morning. He said he would.
Sure, Trustee Phelan, and Mayor and Board. Can you hear me? Is the mic on?
You pulled down your mask a little, Paul.
Yeah, sure. Is the mic on?
Yeah.
Is it on? Can you hear me now?
Right.
Just really briefly, I would say that, after Trustee Phelan contacted me about that inquiry vis-a-vis, the feelings of downstream customers and where we're at in the project and moving forward, I think the response back was that they think CDM Smith is a fine company. They've done a fine job on the engineering. They're excellent engineers. The concern seems to be focused on the actual construction management and them overseeing it and their expertise in that part of the project. And, and I don't know that much about CDM Smith, but it seemed to be certainly a better comfort level with the people that, and I don't know if we're surprised by that. Go to these meetings, I don't, but there seems to be a better comfort level with Christopher Burke Engineering as somebody that is a known entity in the community that knows, I think, some of the communities we're about to go through, particularly Chicago Ridge, and that there seemed to be a better comfort level of, trying to get more people to bid. There's certainly not to what you described of one bidder, but there seemed to be some concern that there weren't a lot of responders to the bid packets. I think that's what the mayor called them, bid packets. And I think that would be my summary. I don't think there's any real criticism of CDM Smith. They think they're fine engineers, but they're concerned as these prices keep increasing that, maybe their expertise in the construction management oversight and getting bids and knowing the communities we're about to go through is not where another company like Christopher Burke could be. I would say that's the bottom line.
Can I just add, Tom? Christopher Burke has been hired by the regional system, what's called a peer review, for that exact reason. So that, again, as Paul said, many of these towns, whether it's Palos Hills or Chicago Ridge or some of the others that we're going through, have been used to working with Christopher Burke, as have we. As the board knows, they oversee our street program. So that is how, also, each one of these towns is on a separate committee. So the larger towns, that being Orland Park, Tinley Park, and the third is New Lenox, are part of the Finance Committee group. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's Orland Park, New Lenox, and Mokina are the finance group. And then there's a managers group of Tinley Park, Orland Park, and those same 2 towns. So in that agreement, this is just an amendment to the agreement to be able to, well, there's a bunch of change, there's a summary in the packet that I sent showing what the amendment does, but I don't want to bore the board with that again. But the original agreement has these committees. There's managers committee, an operating committee so they can see the construction and oversee the exactly to your point, Tom, bid package process, and they have to approve all change orders. So there's also a subcommittee that, now the agreement that we have though is that subcommittee has to meet right away because you don't want the construction to stop.
So if I, and again,
Anyway, I'm saying there is oversight.
I know there's oversight, but to the extent now that we have partners, and they are partners, right? These downstream communities.
No question about it.
And there are
ours is about-
rumblings, because when I mentioned it to him, Paul said, yeah, there's been rumblings. It's like, is there a way to address those rumblings? I mean, if you're saying that Trista Burke's already involved or some other firm on that aspect of it, but when again, coincidentally, the project here we had on Oak Center, CDM was in charge of getting bids for, and I just noticed there was only one bid. And again, I didn't get the details on why four that showed up were supposedly surprised that we had to go under fences or something to that effect. That you would think that competent companies know coming in based on pre-bid specs what the job's going to be. Again, I don't want to suggest anything untoward, but we had this discussion about money, and we don't have any of it, and we're losing it left and right, the pension funds and everything else. I just want to make sure that and I don't know who the end authority, Brian, if it's you, if it's us, Randy, if it's the committee, if everybody's good with it, that we could make it known to them that, hey, we're aware of the complaints, for lack of a better term. If you're saying that the committees that have the managers and the regional.
Well, you were at the meeting, Sandy, and so is Randy.
And, Tom, a lot of these cost overruns are related. One of the bid packages changed their route, and that reflected different prices. Others are tunneling under, like the CalSag.
No, I'm not questioning the cost. I'm questioning
so
how many people can bid on the work to ensure
Yeah.
that we're getting competitive.
I mean,
That was the one-
it's such a transparent process, and the Village of Oaklawn went in from day one to really, say, hey, we're going to be transparent, everyone has a say. I don't know
Brian,
how it could be done better.
Are the downstream communities involved in putting together the bid specs, or is it just in the hands of CDM?
They're responsible for reviewing the bid specs. Every public works director is part of this again, Tom, there's three committees, not to bore you too much, but there's a managers committee, a finance committee, and an operations committee. The operations committee is made up of all the public works directors, and they review those specs with again, some of this is technical. Again, someone like me wouldn't even know what those specs are.
Brian, if I can comment too, when we were at the meeting, they talked about a lot of this is due to permitting as well. When they start changing direction in the communities, then we have to go back out and they have to get permits, and you're dealing with IDOT and county and.
Again, I want to bring it back to a very narrow issue, and that is, are we getting enough interest proposals? Again,
Well, we did the current one, which is the mayor alluded to, that's going under the CalSag. We had, again, some of these are not capable.
Of course.
But there's,
I was gonna say that.
we had 6 bids the last on the current bid package, which is, by the way, the only one that's really under construction right now. So there's going to be 2 this year, and we'll make sure, and the board, obviously, just to be clear, the board is the owner of this system.
Right.
So we, right, wrong, or otherwise, though, we pay for about 11% of it, but we control about almost as much as 15%, because if you remember, we also have this ability to take on 5 million gallons more once the, pipe is in the ground.
That's my point. If there's a problem, we may as well own 100% of it, because they're going to look at us.
And it's under our tax ID number,
So that's why maybe Paul, you have a relationship with Chris Burke beyond the technical. If maybe because you know some of the downstream communities, maybe you could talk with them, Paul, just to smooth out any potential, if there are any. And again, I only heard the rumblings, and maybe you can just nipping it in the bud if there is.
Again, and I know I don't go to the meetings with Brian, I know he does, but I'm out in the community, and I've heard at least, I know Tinley raised something with me. This was on the board last night in Orland. Tinley had a briefing on it, so everybody's dealing with this. Everybody's
Right.
dealing with these amendments right now. They're approving them, so it's on all the board meetings. So there's a lot of talk in the community. I know the mayor you just talked to about it, but I guess I guess the point I was trying to make, just to put a fine point on it, is it's not about permits and running around this. It's about the confidence that CDM Smith is getting the rock bottom lowest price and the most competitive bids. And that's where the discomfort's coming in. That's what I'm hearing.
Okay, Brian, if you could give CDM a call and just say, we're hearing this, what are they doing to address it?
Will do.
And Chris Burke as well. Just have, again, we don't want to go just to the one company who's going to presumably.
No, it's supposed to be the two firms working together on it.
Good.
And I think that's a good thing
Yeah.
for everybody.
Let's get maybe a two-sided opinion on, if everything's fine, fine. I just want to make sure we're on record.
I really think,
The
you know,
discussion.
from day one, we've really tried to make it a really fair process, and, you know.
Again, I don't want this left with an unfair process. I just
Right.
want to make sure that, my only point was, are we being, because I can understand, right? You got a great project going, it's going well, you're working with people, and this could be completely unfounded. I just want to make sure that, you know, on record, if we're hearing the rumblings, that are we doing, and again, right, the Oaklawn, the perceived we, are we doing enough to make sure that every leg of this is getting the most aggressive bid we can possibly get? And if Chris Burke signs off it in addition to CDM, done, right? I only
They
brought it
do.
up the law, and he said to me,
Yep.
yeah, there was some rumbling.
They do, and they're in those meetings in those operating meetings,
All right.
so.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, let me get back to which agenda item we're on.
F,
F, thank you.
got the motion, so I can call the roll.
Thank you. Let's call the vote on 10F. Thanks, Jane.
Trustee Phelan?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Mello?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
And Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move on to item 11. 11 is appeal of an adverse decision by the Appeals and Review Board for a 25-foot variation of the front yard requirement in an R1 single-family residential district at 9369 South Ridgeland Avenue. 4-3 vote to deny the petitioner's Akrama Cook in District 1. May I have a motion on item 11, please?
A motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by trustee Desmond. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, trustee Mallow. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want,
And are you the petitioner outside? Is this you? Okay, would you like to come and, just so you could be in the room while it's heard? Thank you. You could have a seat right there. Thank you.
yeah, I just want to, make the motion to approve the residents' request for a variation.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. Trustee Desmond, was there anything you wanted to discuss?
No.
Okay, any other discussion? We're calling the vote on item 11, a motion to approve the residents' request.
Trustee Phelan?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Mello?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
And Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and then item 12 is ordinance 2016-50, an ordinance granting a front yard variation at 9369 South Ridgeland Avenue. Akrama Cook is the petitioner. May I have a motion on 12, please?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Trustee Desmond made that motion. Do I have a second? Trustee Mallow is our second. Any discussion? Let's call the vote, please.
Trustee Phelan?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Mello?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, Ms. Cook, congratulations. Item 13 is village clerk's report.
Okay. Approval of semi-monthly disbursements, number 2020-18D, dated September 22nd, 2020, in the amount of $1,641,967.08.
Thank you. May I have a vote on, a motion on 13A, please?
Motion to approve.
I'm going to give it to trustee Desmond, seconded by trustee Vorder. Any discussion? Let's call the vote, please.
Trustee Phelan?
Yes.
Trustee Vorder?
Yes.
Trustee Mallow?
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek?
Yes.
Trustee Desmond?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Mayor, a couple more things.
Okay.
For the November 3rd general election, again, we've got early voting right here in this Village Hall Auditorium, second floor, beginning on Monday, October 19th, and continuing every day through November 2nd. The hours are great, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 7 p.m., and on the weekends, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. For more information, you go to cookcountyclerk.com. And I've gotten so many phone calls in the last week. Secretary of State Jesse White sent out this letter. And I saw on TV last night on the news that they really confuse people. People that sent away for a mail-in ballot are getting these letters saying, we didn't receive your ballot. It's a different agency, actually, than the Cook County Clerk. So just to verify, I was so glad I got this on Saturday. I said, my husband said, you got this letter from Jesse White. I said, oh, I'm going to take that into work. So anybody that's waiting for their mail-in ballot, I don't think they have not mailed them out yet. They will be coming. So any other questions, you can give me a call. And just a couple of little items. I give churches and entities credit for trying to have a few things. On October 3rd and 4th, St. Nicholas Greek Church at 103rd and Kenton will be hosting their food to go event. And everybody knows how wonderful, their food is, so please try to support them. And the First United Church at 100th and Central, they're having a rummage sale September 24th through the 26th. And everybody's favorite is their pumpkin patch, also at 100th and Central, and that's from October 11th to the 31st. So there's some nice things for residents to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and Greek Fest was canceled this year, Jane, but that Greek food, if you,
Yes.
yeah, I don't have, the desserts, oh my God. And you could get them, anyone ever have them? What do they call, Lukamatis? Oh my God, okay. And I'm not a big sweet lover, but that, I gotta have it once a year. Okay. Item 14, Village President's Report. I really have nothing. Item 15, Executive Session 2020-08. For the purpose of discussing, number one, approval of the closed session minutes 2020-07 dated August 11th, 2020, and number two, pending litigation. May I have a motion on 15?
Move to.
Trustee Oliniechek made that motion, seconded by Trustee Phelan. Any discussion? Let's call the vote. We're voting to go into executive session.
Trustee Phelan.
Yes.
Trustee Vorder.
Yes.
Trustee Mallow.
Yes.
Trustee Oliniechek.
Yes.
Trustee Desmond.
Yes.
Motion
Okay,
passes.
thank you. We will go into executive session, and it is 10:02 a.m. Thank you.